Hey, Alex.
Hey, Elliot. How are you?
I'm good. Just got back from GDC.
How was GDC for you?
It felt a little different than the past 2 years. I think the past 2 years felt a little somber. I think this year there started to be a little bit more energy. Definitely on and off the show floor. People were excited to talk about what they were building. A lot of people building new stuff. I was excited to talk about what we were building.
I felt it was a little less one note than last year's, where we had the crypto wave and the metaverse wave. And then I thought it would be a lot more about AI this time. There was some AI, there was still some crypto and some VR metaverse stuff, but a lot of people just making games and not talking about any specific technology, lots of vendors. And it was nice to see, I think, a little bit more optimism in the industry after a couple of rough years. It feels like a lot of the pain was behind us in a lot of ways, and a lot of new teams forming and starting to work on stuff that's really exciting.
I think last year at GDC, AI was everywhere and it felt confusing and it felt scary, and there was just a general sentiment of unease and uncertainty. This year felt a little different. Was there anything that stood out to you that you think is going to change development for teams in the indie space?
There's a lot more focus on actually building really smart tools with AI. So we saw some mocap stuff and some facial capture stuff that uses AI to improve the quality of the capture. And I think that's great because it allows you to maybe build a mocap studio in a small indie studio for a lot less money and really improve a lot of the data using AI. There's stuff like scene capture and asset capture, like using your phone to capture stuff and then having some sort of AI clean up the data and fix the models and stuff like that. All of that stuff can speed stuff up for small teams. I think that stuff is great. But there was also like stuff that says, make me a chair, and then it makes you a chair.
Yeah.
We're going to see a lot of that being put into games. My thought is that a lot of that stuff starts looking the same. The way we look at AI, I think we both agree, is that it can be a great way for indie studios to create new things without having to have this massive cost of equipment and as many people on the team. So we saw a little bit more grounded uses of that technology.
There's always this tension between the potential of the technology and the creativity of human beings. And I think the more interesting space to look is about where the technology will enable that creativity. So I think you're definitely right on. It seemed a lot less like here's a text input and here's your 3D or 2D output type tech. For me, the stuff that was exciting were the bigger leaps around like character AI evolution. We'd been seeing this for the past few years. There's a lot of text-to-speech stuff that's been incredibly impressive every year. But I think it was like the NVIDIA ACE tech, which are characters that are able to perceive and act on their environments. And just the possibilities that this opens up for emergent narrative, just something that we talk about all the time. I think there will be a world very soon where truly emergent narratives allow no two playthroughs in a game to be alike. And that's incredibly exciting if used for the right reasons, if employed with the right game design and surrounded with the right lore and creative direction. And to me, this was the first year where I got really excited about that potential and possibility.
Yeah, we'll see really interesting uses of it. We'll see probably problematic uses of this type of stuff. Speaking of NVIDIA, they also announced RTX Neural shaders, and this type of stuff is pretty impressive. It allows you to generate graphics that were really hard to put together, especially as a small team. Now we need to see these things used in the wild. A lot of this AI stuff is pretty expensive to run when it runs on servers, like the inference cost, as they're called. A lot of these things require latest gens GPUs to have an impact. And so we're going to see that stuff over the next 3 years. I think we'll start seeing stuff kind of trickle in, and hopefully somebody comes up with great ways of using this thing to make new types of games. Unity is also integrating AI into its next versions into the next version. We're definitely also seeing a lot more coding done with AI, like shader coding and things like that, which allows you to move much quicker. But once again, none of this stuff should replace people entirely. I think it's only exciting to us when it allows a small team to do more and to tell better stories and to compete with larger teams. And that's great. I think that type of stuff is great. One of my favorite booths that I where I talked to the folks there with the folks at Rive, RIVE, which are
Yeah.
doing this really great animation tool, which is, like you can do stuff like in After Effects, but it's also, you can apply logic. So you can design great UIs. And we talked to them about their integration into Unity, which is still in development, but it'll allow you to create very great smart UI and also in-game animations. I would recommend everyone check that out. I think the tool is free to try. That was really exciting to see what they were doing there.
This video is not sponsored by Rive. This is just a
It's
wholehearted
not.
endorsement.
But if it were, then we'd be happy.
Yeah, we would.
We want to see it probably for our next game.
So we talked a little bit about some of the tech and the feel of the show floor and a little bit of that shift. You mentioned optimism or focus from smaller teams. I'm curious, though, there was a survey from GDC and it said specifically 13% of devs working are on 50+ hour weeks. We're also seeing a shift towards more solo devs. 21% of the industry are people taking their own creative risks of saying, I have an idea, I want to make this, and working as hard as they can to bring it to life. I'm curious where your thought is on this tension between, on one side, tools to work more efficiently, and on the other side, this trend of smaller teams like teetering on the brink of potentially burning themselves out by pumping in these, really intense weeks. Is there an opportunity in the industry to either find a nicer balance of tooling and human sanity, or do you think you're going to continue to see that trend where teams get smaller, but they're working a lot harder?
I wish I could be optimistic. Tools bring more productivity. It also brings more competition. So everybody's trying to get faster, release faster. Tools are not going to save us. It'll simplify certain things. It'll definitely remove some of the pain points from the jobs. There are definitely parts of the work in art and engineering that are just not super fun. So it's great to have something like AI to take over that, like debugging, potentially some playtesting stuff. But no, I think what's going to happen is it's a cultural thing. If it's your solo project and you're passionate to do it, then maybe 80 hours a week doesn't feel like a lot of work. I did that when I was younger. If you're working on a yearly release of a sports game, then 50 hours might feel like you're burning out because you kind of work on similar things day in, day out. So I think it needs to be cultural. I feel like the tools are not going to save us. What the tools will allow us to do is work as a single person. Now, how much time you want to apply to that work, that's up to you, right? And that's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see a lot of solo and small teams spinning up projects because a lot of people will go from those big jobs and are kind of burned out and want to do something by themselves. And oftentimes they'll work as hard as they did before, but because they're working on something that they're passionate about, it doesn't feel like they're burning out. I think corporations are definitely going to use those tools and not ask people to work less. That's for sure.
We're definitely starting to see that. We're seeing these indie games with much higher production value, a creative vision, starting to win over the kind of tried and true market formulas. And, something that we talk about a lot, which is this idea of a contained, more meaningful experience rather than something that's pursuing endless content or a 40, 60, 80 hour campaign or cycle. And I'm always a quality over quantity person, which brings me to something else I really want to talk about with you, which are some of the games on the floor from Day of the Devs, which we both went to on Sunday through some of the
great
conversations we had after. I want to propose a little rapid fire. Maybe we can each pick a handful of games and just go back to back, sharing some stuff that stood out. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Right.
Yeah, I can get started.
You go first.
I was trying to make sure that I get it right because this is probably the game I'm the most excited to play.
Okay.
I think it's called Super Shotgun Cop.
Oh, it's called Shotgun Cop.
Oh yeah, it's called Cop Man, and that game looked really great. It's a very kind of precise, twitchy 2D platformers where you control this shotgun cop that uses his gun both as kind of like a weapon, but also as a locomotion.
Yeah.
The graphics are crazy. It's really hard to describe, actually. It's both very 2D and flat, but then it zooms into these like really bizarre kind of character models. It just looks super fun, super Meat Boy, Celeste-ish. kind of type game. That's on my top 3 of games I want to play.
Nice. All right, I'm going to go with Time Flies, which is this 1-bit hyper minimalist game where you play as a housefly. You have a limited lifespan, which adds urgency. You're creating these tiny acts of chaos, ruining food, annoying people, and it's incredible. Like the most stripped down visuals that you can imagine, but still so much imagination and so many little details. And I saw this game, I got a chance to play this game. It was remarkable how much personality can exist in such a visually restrained package. I loved it, and I think it's going to be a huge hit.
Yeah, and it just looks so good. The game I have next is Dreams of Another. You're walking around in your pajamas, surrounded by very abstract shape, and you recreate the world by shooting at it with your gun.
Yeah.
I think part of it, because it's made by Q Games, who lately released like All You Need Is Help and stuff with, I don't know how they're related to Pixel Junk, but they've definitely made stuff that you've seen and know. But that game looks really, really interesting.
I think it looked wild. It's like an interesting take on creation, destruction, the relationship between them.
Yeah.
Hard to tell if it's mature or not, because you see these beautiful things, but you also see automatic weapons, and that juxtaposition is interesting, but I don't know what the rating for a game like that's going to be.
Yeah.
All right, I've got another one for you. This one, when I first saw this, I thought I was looking at a game that I played last year, but the more I stood by and watched it, and the pacing and the character in it, the more I was kind of blown away and excited. And this game was called Isopod. And Isopod is a 3D platformer where you play as an adorable little pill bug. You're navigating the world from the insect perspective. So it looks like Empire of Ants, which is a game that I wanted to love it. It's really beautiful. The gameplay didn't click with me. And this takes that perspective and that attention to detail, but it kind of puts it in almost like a Spider-Man sense. It moves incredibly fast. You can zip around, you can turn into a ball, you can destroy obstacles. It moves at an incredible pace, and it really feels authentically bug scale. And I think there's something really empowering about taking down massive enemies when you're just a tiny little bug. Made by a very small team, looks incredible, and I'm very excited for more games to take place at insect perspectives.
We need more games where you're like a tiny thing in a big world.
I love
it. I got a couple. I think I'm trying to pick from my list there. I mean, I'll just do some runners up here. Far Away, which is like this it's an Annapurna published game. Really simple concept that you kind of fly this comet across constellations, beautiful 2D art. Feels very satisfying to play.
It's beautiful,
Haste,
beautiful scales.
Where you're just running really fast, and I think it gives that real sense of moving really fast. It's maybe like the best version of a 3D Sonic game I've seen. I know obvious people that love those Sonic games, they're saying that, but I don't think I've ever enjoyed a 3D Sonic game, and this feels like that's what it should feel like. My Arms Are Longer Now, where you play somebody with really long arms. I think
it was on my list as well.
Yeah.
It's a detective game.
Yeah,
it's like a detective thief hybrid game.
Okay. There was To a T, which is like the Keita Takahashi, which is the game. Has a game where you play as this boy that's stuck in the T pose and has to navigate the world. It also has like a subtle it's a dialogue around disability and and without kind of forcing the topic, kind of tells a pretty interesting story around that and makes you experience that in a different way. So I thought that was really interesting. Also, it's delightful because it's from the person behind Katamari, so it's really nice. The one I'm actually looking forward to trying is Mindwave. Crazy art style, it's WarioWare, but even MarioWare is kind of this game that feels like it's cranked up to 11. This is maybe cranked up to 12. Really great use of sound and transitions and animation. Just mechanically, even though it's quite simple and every action you take is something you might have seen before, the way it's all executed together feels really novel. And I think people are going to really dig that game. I think it's great.
Good picks, man. All right, you kind of cheated because I said one more and you had some runners up. So I'm gonna do the same thing. So I know it's another farming simulator, but Super Farming Boy was a very irreverent take on farming simulators. I thought there was this 90s animation aesthetic that really resonated with me, and I feel like this game is if Harvest Moon chugged some energy drinks and started wearing sunglasses indoors, it would be Super Farming Boy. So that's
Yeah, it
an
looks really
honorable
good.
mention for me.
Yes. Yeah.
Neon Abyss 2. So this is a sequel. It had some of the most beautiful neon infused visuals I've seen, a mix with these really interesting kind of symbolic systems, silky smooth platforming, amazing weapon combinations, and I think a lot of it was procedurally generated with random room placement. And I just think, you know, it was doing
It looks so
interesting
good.
stuff in roguelike.
Mhm.
I also want to give a shout out to Asafa Guys, which was this kind of rage game with these like Ren and Stimpy inspired aesthetics. You control people with super long, weird winding necks and kind of have to grappling hook around. The art direction of that game was wild. But my number one was a game I don't think I knew I would have picked because I don't play a lot of arcade brawler beat 'em ups.
Oh, I know.
Jay
Yeah.
and Silent Bob's Chronic Blunt Punch, which is, to me, it felt like an homage to, you know, Streets of Rage, Simpsons Arcade. It was gorgeous. The animation was absolutely beautiful. I know Kevin Smith is involved, so it's accurate to the franchise. But for me, the thing that really stood out was the writing in this game. Every time I looked at the screen, whether it was a trailer or when I got to play it, I was just cracking up at the background art and storytelling in this game. And I think that those details make these games fun because sometimes you're just beating up for so long, you need something else to do while you're playing. Yeah, man, I look forward to the next one. All right, buddy. Good chatting with you. Love talking games. All right, bye, everybody.